All right, can everyone hear me? Is that okay? Great. All right then. Well, welcome everybody, and I see a few names I recognize there, so welcome to you all. And yeah, so this is the first in what will hopefully be a series of both online and in-person events, and we're calling that Take Action for Wildlife. So we're kind of developing a series of, like I say, online and in-person training and information events. So I'm Nick Purdew. I am the Green Minds Urban Ranger, and I work for Devon Wildlife Trust, and I work on the Green Minds project with the range of the project partners. So like Zoe said, today we've got a couple of other guest presenters. We've got Jess Smallcombe from the Devon Biological Record Centre and Carijn Beumer from Maastricht University, and she's a lecturer assistant professor in global health at Maastricht University. So I am just going to say that I'm going to do a quick presentation giving you an overview of the Green Minds project, and then we'll hand over to Jess, who will give you an introduction to citizen science and monitoring. And then we will go to Carijn for her presentation about a framework for urban biodiversity assessment. And then at the end, we'll just do some, well, you'll have a chance to ask any questions of us. And yeah, that'll be it. So I'm just going to share my screen and hopefully okay, so Green Minds. What is Green Minds? Green Minds is a multi-partner citywide project that's led by Plymouth City Council, working in collaboration with Devon Wildlife Trust, the University of Plymouth, the National Trust, the Data Place, and the Real Ideas organisation. And by testing a systems-based approach to delivering nature-based solutions, the project aims to improve health and well-being of Plymouth residents, increase biodiversity, and enable green enterprise to thrive. The Green Minds vision is to rewild people and places. So we hope to do this by inspiring people to connect to nature through delivering rewilding and nature-based projects on the ground. We'll experiment with different delivery and management approaches that support community stewardship and green enterprise, creating green mindsets, and we'll use science and creative digital tools to make nature visible and exciting. Throughout the project, we will evaluate our impact and communicate what we learn in innovative and creative ways. The project itself will focus on 5 key investment sites, including Derriford Community Park, which is the site of the beaver reintroduction, and greening grey corridors with trees and wildflowers to increase wildlife connectivity, support biodiversity and climate resilience. Developing green social enterprise in Devonport and Stonehouse to build businesses that benefit wildlife and people. Focus on Central Park and the sustainable urban drainage projects, and also the creation of a community orchard and rewilding of the old A Road at Saltram Countryside Park, the National Trust. But really the project goes beyond pure physical action on the ground. Our approach is based on collaboration and experimentation to co-create different innovations and actions. And this means working across boundaries, influencing and involving old and new stakeholders, and broadening leadership to include those not formally in charge. So in my role as Devon Wildlife Trust's Urban Ranger, I'll be working with the other project partners by leading a Green Minds Ranger service that provides opportunities for people to get involved with hands-on conservation tasks and citizen science activities. Developing a training program for professionals and the public, with DWT staff sharing their expertise on beavers, tree planting, wildflower meadow restoration, wildlife surveying, and more. Demonstrating urban pest control methods that show how a city become pesticide free. And improving habitats to make urban wildlife corridors in the west of the city, as well as supporting the development of 6 apprentices who can go on to embed nature into their future careers. So that's a pretty brief overview of the project. In summary, Green Minds will develop Plymouth as a nature city, rewilding people and places through increased biodiversity, improved health and well-being, thriving green social enterprise, and more positive attitudes to nature. And you can find more information about the Green Minds project in Devon Wildlife Trust at the Devon Wildlife Trust website, and also the Green Minds Plymouth website. Okay, so that is the end of that very brief overview. And so I'll just pass on to Jess Smallcombe, who's the community ecologist at Devon Biodiversity Record Centre, who will be doing her presentation now. Thanks, Jess.
I will, if you can stop sharing your screen, Nick.
Yes. Oh goodness. I've minimized the screen. Someone help me.
I don't know how, I'm afraid.
No, neither do I.
If you press escape, Nick.
Yep. For some reason, I can only see the grid of presenters.
If you hover your mouse at the top of the screen, you might see some way to exit off the screen.
Here we go. There we go. Figured it out.
Right, so hopefully you'll be able to see my screen now. So yes, thank you very much everyone for coming. Very nice to see some familiar names. I'm going to just quickly go through a bit of an introduction to biological recording. So with the Green Minds project, as Nick has already said in his introduction about rewilding people and places, connecting the residents of Plymouth with local green space and taking action to support biodiversity. And one of the big keys of that is to be action for insects, which is also a Devon Wildlife Trust project for this year and the immediate future. So one of the ways in which you can take action to support biodiversity is actually by recording it. So last year, in between various lockdowns and complications, I went down to Plymouth and had a look around some of the investment sites, including Central Park, which you can see my mouse here on the left, and also the Lower Bircham Valley, which is the picture on the right, which is going to form part of the greater Derriford Park. And there are some fantastic habitats there, but we need to know what we've got already so we can see how it improves over the course of the project and measure that change, which will help us help to inform us how to manage and conserve what we have. So there are some basics on how to record. So obviously we need to know a few questions, such as who is recording. So for DBRC, we'll take the recorder's name and contact details purely so that we can contact you if there's something really exciting about your record. What did you see? So it's really useful if you can take a photo. So here's a few pictures: butterflies, plants, reptiles, frog spawn there. Obviously, some things are much easier to take photos of than others because they go by far too quickly. But if you can, that's really useful. It just helps to with our verification process. Where did you see your plant or invertebrates? So biological records usually are based on a grid reference, but you can also include an address or location notes. For getting a grid reference, there's some really easy ways you can get them on your phone, online. We'll see in a second that there's a way that you can use it on an app. But a 10-figure grid reference can narrow it down to a 1 meter square. And most biological records are happy with a 6-figure reference. So you can see here the whole country is split up into squares, the initially given letters. So those are 100 kilometers by 100 kilometers. And for every letter, you get narrow by a margin of 10. So SX45 would be a 10 kilometer square, SX4756 would be a 1 kilometre square, and then you go down to 100 metres, 10 metres, and finally the 1 metre square, just to explain that. When did you see your sighting? So that can be a date. Obviously, if it's on an exact date, that's great. If it's something like a plant, then chances are it was there the day before and the day after. So if you can't remember exactly when you saw it, just if you can go for something for that week would be great. And notes. So notes on abundance, how many, or if it is something like a plant and it's taking over half the field, then simply present is perfectly fine. You don't need to count everything. The life stage, male, female, what it was doing, and then sometimes notes about the weather or the habitat it was in can be useful as well. Survey method is generally used only if you're looking at bats or something and you've got a bat recorder, bat detector, so that would be different from a visual record. So how to submit records? We've set up a space on iRecord for records, or you can send them straight into DBRC as well. So I'm just going to take you through how you can do that. So for iRecord, if you go to the website, you can sign in. And then if you go to activities and browse all activities, you can search. And I searched for Plymouth, which seemed to work. And here is the Green Minds activity. And so what that means, if you use the Green Minds activity on iRecord, is that all your records we can store in one place, and it can be shared between the different partners who run the project. And so we can really see how things are changing and how people are getting involved. Got a circle here around nothing because there should be a star, but because I've already joined it, it isn't there. But there would be a star. So if you click the star, it helps you to join the project. And the good thing with the iRecord is that you can do it from your phone. So this is just the phone app. So if you go to activities, you can choose the one that you've already signed up to online. You can start typing in whatever you see. So here's sparrow. Beware that there are various options, so make sure you get the right one. So house sparrow in this case. And then it will give you an automatic grid reference of where you are if you do it there and then. But you can go and if you click that, you can choose where you are if you need to change your location. And then this is the DBRC one, which is online on the website, and it's very similar with the information that you need to put in, and you can use the map as well to say where you are. So that was really, really quick, but just two different ways that you can send us in records. So iRecord is one of the ones that's an app that's really good. It is part of the Biological Recording Centre, and all those records are verified, as well as we will verify any that come to us as well. Got a few frequently asked questions. So species ID. What if I don't know exactly what it is? Don't guess. So that's one thing, is if you don't know the species, go to the genus, go to sort of the highest level that you're sure of. For example, if you see bats flying about, we have 16 species of bats in Devon, and even an expert might not know exactly which one it is that's flying past. So you can just say a bat is fine. That's sort of level that you know, but don't guess. Personal data with your if you send a record into DBRC and we ask for your name and contact details, it is purely for that record, for no other reason, and we'll never share it with anyone. Verification, all our records are sent to county experts who will check records and make sure they're appropriate and nothing odd or strange slips through onto the database. And once they are part of the database, they're used for conservation, for professional ecologists, for research, for all sorts of reasons. to help wildlife within Devon. So what are we asking you to record? We're talking about citizen science at the moment, and over the course of the next few months, Nick and I are coming up with plans in which to engage you with various projects of recording, and we'll be offering some training and asking you maybe to look for some specific things, but they will come up over the summer. So do sign up to the Green Minds newsletter and you'll find out more about that. But we were asking at the moment just to record everything, anything, as you go around. Just get used to recording, because it's so important to get this really good baseline and see how things change over the course of the project. So incidental records, so that's one as you're walking around and you spot something, have a look, see what it is, and pop it on the app, put it on a list, wherever, note it down on the back of your hand, as long as you've got all those points of who, where, what, when, and any other notes. There's a biodiversity toolkit, a started one on the website, giving you some information on identification and on recording if you wanted to do some more formal monitoring of an area, for example, if your garden or your business, that will help you to do a habitat survey and see what's in there. COVID restrictions allowing, do a bioblitz of a certain area, so that's where you get a few people and you just look at everything. Or you could just focus on one type of thing, particularly if you're learning, or if you take a guidebook with you and just look at birds or plants or butterflies or any other invertebrates. But at the moment, we're just asking people to start using iRecord, to get engaged. Let us know if there's something that you want to do in particular. Let us know if there's some way or that you would like to offer, maybe skills that you already have to help with the Green Minds project. This is the biodiversity monitoring document that, if it isn't on the website, will be shortly. And we've started putting some resources on the Knowledge Hub, which I think Nick might talk about later. But on the Green Minds website, Knowledge Hub, you can find talks that have already happened, and also the start of our citizen science resources. So I really, really hope that we will hear from you about various opportunities, and you'll hear from us. There is one at the moment. So at the National Trust, they're looking for experienced ecological surveyors to help with the baseline data at Saltram. You can get in touch with them. The email address, I'll pop it in the chat in a moment, just emailing Saltram to find out more about that. Thank you very much. Whistle stop tour of our initial biological recording, with more to come. Thank you. Nick.
Can you hear me well?
Yeah.
Yeah, I just have to find the screen that I'm hoping to share with you. Somehow it went away. Just hang on a second, bear with me. There it is. So at first, again, a thank you for Nick and Jess and Zoe for asking me to present for you something on the research that I've been doing at Maastricht University. And Nick asked me to to see what we could do together based on a framework that I developed to assess biodiversity, especially in gardens. So that means front yards, backyards, but it can also be parks or school gardens, a little bit, well, basically small urban landscapes. And I would like to present that framework here, as it is intended to be a framework that is also suitable for citizen science, for people to connect with their gardens, to see what's going in there, as well as ecologically, but also what you can do to improve biodiversity in your garden. So it can be used as a tool for inspiration, but also a tool for measuring what's going on in your garden, and how you can improve the situation for biodiversity and also for your urban larger context. I hope it is all readable here. Based on the idea of not in my backyard, the NIMBY thought, we gave the framework the name Bimbi, which is biodiversity in my backyard, as that is something we do want in our backyard, hopefully. So biodiversity is the life on Earth and all its plants and animal variety. And through rapid processes of urbanization, agricultural intensification, and other human land use changes, a lot of things are happening to biodiversity as well. In urban context, this is both good news and bad news. In some ways, urban areas have become the refuge areas for a lot of species that have been lost due to agricultural intensification and the loss of natural landscapes outside of cities. So, and that is actually also a call for action to urban inhabitants to make this space also suitable for biodiversity. We have this responsibility to invite life in, you could say. But what I noted in a lot of urban areas and neighborhoods especially, and in any case in the Netherlands, but I also read in the UK, this is the same, as it's the same in Belgium and in Germany. A lot of people pave their gardens, or they put in hard surface, whether it's pavement or gravel or even concrete sometimes. They make these places unsuitable for any form of life. And on top of that, it also has implications for the water uptake in that urban area, and also the heat in warmer times in summer, as green coverage will both store water and keep water from running away or flooding, and it also regulates the temperature in the city. So actually paving gardens is a big lost opportunity for biodiversity in spatial terms, especially if you consider urban areas as an important place for biodiversity, and if you want to make it also a strong part of green infrastructures, connecting urban areas to the outside areas, which are the natural areas, but also greening and rewilding agricultural areas. So yeah, in this world of ongoing biodiversity loss, we have a lot of urbanization and climate change leading to that. And of course, that affects the quality of life in our cities, and also it affects the amount of ecosystem services. I'm not sure if that is a term most of you are familiar with, but we'll come to that in a second. In a nutshell, these are the services that ecosystems provide for free to us human beings, basically. So instead of paving our small-scale urban areas, we can also use these areas as a spatial opportunity for biodiversity. And these are some examples of how that can look like. I think most of you are familiar with images like this as well. On this part has been part of my research in Phoenix in Arizona, where green has a very different meaning from green in moderate climates in Europe. More green isn't always a good thing in Arizona because that gobbles up a lot of water. So it's also very important to be very context specific. More biodiversity is not always better. It depends really on the context that you are in and what kind of biodiversity you invite in your gardens through planting and through designing your yard. And of course, a lot of people like exotic plants because they look nice, but they don't add a lot of additional value for native insects or native mammals. Even though it increases biodiversity, of course, in your garden and in the city on the whole. So, yeah, and be aware of the context specificity of increasing biodiversity in your garden. So, more to the concept of ecosystem services, or also disservices that are provided by domestic gardens. I first want to make a note that in the regular framework for ecosystem services, which are the services that ecosystems support to people, it is often forgotten that people are also part of ecosystems and that we also provide services to ecosystems, and not particularly only to human beings, but also to animal species, for example. So I wanted to highlight that also in this framework, and in showing how people, through particular ways of designing their gardens and maintaining their gardens, provide services for pollinators, provide habitat, for example, for species, food and nesting opportunities, and all sorts of other elements you can think of. Just think about bird housing or piling up some rubble for hedgehogs to do their hibernation. All kinds of things we can do for the other non-human animals in our ecosystem. Of course, we can also provide a lot of disservices to other creatures, which is, for example, pollution through pesticides or herbicides, or through, well, I call it desertification, which is maybe paving your garden or not adding anything of value in it. Fragmentation, disturbing your garden too much, for example, by, well, yeah, there are, of course, if you have children like I have, they play in the garden, they're footballing, and the ball might land on the house of a hedgehog. So, of course, you have to take into account these things as well, if you're using your garden. But then also the services that are actually also inherent in ecosystems, like supporting services that are the fundamental services, like the formation of soil, nutrients for the garden, biodiversity itself as something that supports all the other services in the green square. Gardens and biodiversity in gardens also provide regulating services like air purification, water quality, creating microclimates, for example, if you think about urban areas, especially cooling places in hot summer days, like a tree, for example, provides the same amount of cooling as 10 microwaves, as 10 what are these things called? Not microwaves, but the opposite. Air conditioners, right? So one tree for 10 air conditioners. And things like provisioning services like food for animals, or for us, like apples or berries, materials that we can use to make things like wood, or things for making presents, you know, everything you can get from your garden, like flowers to give on a birthday. And also a space to be in. Also for us, it provides a habitat, of course, a garden. And it provides a lot of cultural services, which are aesthetic, can be spiritual or educational. Also think about relaxation, your health and well-being. A lot of people report that they relax in their garden and that they go in there to enjoy and to recreate, but also to have social interaction with their neighbors, for example. I focus now on the services. These services are also an important part of the story, but I think for now that will take up too much time. I asked Zoe also to send you this poster that you can have a look in your own time as well. So the aims of this framework are to collect data on biotic and abiotic factors in residential landscapes. Biotic factors are, of course, everything that is naturally inside an ecosystem. Abiotic is what we as human beings put in there as well. And also think about stones, fences, all these kinds of things that also have an effect on biodiversity and on the green infrastructure and the role of your garden in that. Also, it should enable to link data from the gardens to existing social or ecological data sets or other survey results or GIS data. So this would ideally be something, well, this Bimbi framework could be combined with other ways of assessing gardens. But it's also meant as a tool to foster dialogue on biodiversity and ecosystem services inside and beyond cities and inside neighborhoods between inhabitants that are, well, increasingly engaged in gardening and rewilding urban landscapes. Well, I don't know if you know the song, It's Not Easy Being Green, but I wanted to emphasize that being green may be even easier than not being green if it comes to gardening. A lot of people think that it is easier to maintain a garden with no green at all, and that's why they pave their gardens. But of course, these desertified gardens also have to be maintained, and that often happens with a lot of frustration, a lot of chemicals, a lot of water, for example. And well, it's not a nice thing to do. And I think it's much nicer to find ways that if you don't have a lot of time, if you don't feel you have green fingers for maintaining gardens, to find ways that are even very easy to maintain a green garden through soil covering plants, for example, that also minimize the amount of weeds that will grow. And of course, the aim is to show, well, apart from being easy, is to increase the wildlife habitats in urban areas. So this is basically the framework. I don't know if I can zoom in more. No, sorry. So that might look a little bit complex, but what you see are these different colors, and you have the green part. I don't know if you see my mouse moving. Yeah, you can see that. Okay, so this green part represents the ecological factors, and I won't go through all of them because then we don't have time for a nice discussion. But some things are like, for example, the type of habitat, whether it's a wet one with a lot of water, a green one, whether there's dry landscape, also based on deserts, or a mix of all of these. What kind of soil coverage is there, for example, and how that relates to the permeability of the soil, whether that is a high permeability or low. Also different types of species, exotics and natives, but also annuals and perennials, trees, shrubs, flowers and weeds. Well, all kinds of animals are in these ecological factors, and you could even zoom in much more into species, for example. But we used animal groups here to make it because yeah, a lot of people cannot tell the wobbly-nosed bat from the heightened bat, or you know. I wouldn't be able to tell even. So we just thought, okay, let's well, people know what a bird is, and if they know more specifically, they can report the specific species as well. And then there is this line that is kind of the transition towards the anthropogenic factors. And these are things like boulders or walls or hedges or fences or water bodies, and that often represent something that is put in there by people, but also has a strong ecological function very often, or is not really something you could say, well, it's on the threshold of being natural or cultural, right? And then the anthropogenic factors are the factors that are really something that are people based. Cultural things, for example, putting in things like containers in your garden, putting in feeders or nesting facilities, insect hotels, bird bathing opportunities, all kinds of things that kind of positively contribute to biodiversity, but also things that could negatively contribute, like these disturbing factors like play equipment, vehicles, pets. Think about cats, for example, which are a big burden on biodiversity in gardens. Artificial lighting, and things like plastic mulch. You're not believing it, but it exists. Well, of course, the way how gardens are irrigated also matters, whether these are evaporating a lot of water, especially in arid areas. It matters how you irrigate your garden, whether you do that with spraying fountains or whether you do that with dripping systems that put water directly into the soil. Also, how people maintain their garden. If there is a high intensity of maintenance, that means often that there is a lot of disturbance and not particularly a place for the wild growth of stuff, you know, the neat and tidy gardens, you could say. The lower maintenance gardens are often more favorable for higher biodiversity. But also signs of conflict with nature, like using artificial fertilizers, pesticides, herbicides, other damages or diseases where human and animal, or humans and nature, come into kind of a conflict with each other, right? So something important, I think, in our gardens or urban green spaces. And then also the level of design. Well, this whole framework on visual elements, so you can see a lot of these things by looking at the garden and going and visiting it. You could even see a lot of these things by making a photo and analyzing it at home, for example. But it is also, if you want to get more deeper insight in how people maintain their garden, especially, and what kind of ideas they have, and also what kind of animals they see in their garden, it's very important also to talk with people. So there's a objective element of things that you can easily discover and see for yourself, but also a subjective element that requires also the perspectives, and including the perspectives of people through interviews that you can do with them. So that's in a nutshell the framework. I can talk for hours. I think I have to speed up. Well, the idea is to kind of facilitate communication, exchange, knowledge production, and learning for sustainability in an urban environment by bringing all these types of people together in the field of gardening or small urban landscapes. And also connecting the knowledge of all these people so that their stakes are as well involved, as well as the stakes of biodiversity are as high as possible. and of course also with the hope to increase eco-literacy in society. People can talk in an intelligible way about what's going on in their urban environments, and that they know how important it is to take care of the green and to make sure that that there is space for biodiversity in cities. That's it for now. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Carijn. That was really interesting. I personally think that people have potentially realised more so than normal the value of green spaces, particularly sort of over the last year or 2 years, and sort of how they can enhance biodiversity or even just kind of notice species in their garden. So if you want to stop sharing your screen, then we can see your face a bit clearer, and then we'll get on to the questions. So I'll just make sure that Nick and Jess are actually able to speak, because that would be helpful. So what I'll do is I'll get through some of the questions, but obviously if you do still have some, please pop them into the chat and I'll try and get through as many as possible in the time that we have left. So the first question is, have you noticed any effects on wildlife since the last 3 lockdowns? I think that's a general question to the Green Minds project.
Oh, have we noticed any changes? Well, unfortunately, haven't really been out in the field that much, just due to the lockdown. So, and obviously we've been in winter, so yeah, it's not the ideal time of year for getting out and seeing species. But hopefully, this summer we'll be getting out there and doing lots of recording, and yeah, we'll be keeping an eye on that iRecord activity. I'll be expecting to see lots of sign-ups and lots of participants added to that activity. It'd be really interesting to see. I don't know if anyone else. What about yourself, Jess? I mean, you got out over last summer, didn't you?
I did. I was out last summer in Central Park, which was actually, it was quite busy people-wise. But it'd be interesting when we go back this year to see if there's been any changes. I think one of the big changes is not just the wildlife, but with the people and how they appreciate those spaces at the strange times.
That's a good point. So the next question is, great information and great initiative. How can I or my organisation from Uganda, East Africa, get involved with yours? Or is there any room for a partner or collaboration?
Wow, Uganda, crikey, that's that's quite far afield. I mean, yeah, we appreciate all collaborations and all help that we can get. If you are really interested, there's a contact form on the Green Minds website. So anyone who wants to get involved in the project can go to there, drop us a line, and yeah, we can go from there and see how you can help us and we can help you.
Brilliant. The next question is, in our garden, we only have foxes and squirrels and bees in our gardens. Could this be a bad effect on biodiversity?
Jess, do you want to take that?
Foxes and, what was it? Foxes and squirrels and bees? Squirrels
and bees, yeah.
Well, I assume that there are some plants in there, some flowers that the bees are coming to. And foxes, you must have some space. Bees are great. Foxes, you get lots of foxes, obviously without knowing where you are, you get lots of urban foxes. And squirrels are pretty ubiquitous. So they may have an effect on some things, but probably not much if you're urban. It sounds like if you're getting foxes and squirrels and bees, you've probably got quite a nice garden, actually.
It seems like good news.
Yeah.
The next question is, I live in a semi-rural area and I have 2 neighbours who I think find it hard to let wildlife in. One has a concrete garden and bleaches it every year, and the other mows their lawn and down to a millimetre and never lets anything grow. What would your advice be to change the attitudes with regards to over-tidying gardens?
I think just showing people what can be let into their gardens if they just let things go a bit wilder is probably the best way. You know, we all appreciate different things in life, and some people love an absolutely manicured lawn with some really nice roses. Some people like things a bit wilder. some people like an absolute rambling mess. I mean, there's different grades of interest, aren't there? But I think personally, we can all do stuff that can help nature a bit more. I mean, we're in a biodiversity emergency. We can all do our parts, and our backyards are a great place to start. So, there's heaps of information out there. There's heaps of information on the Wildlife Trust websites on how you can encourage more wildlife into your garden, whether that's sowing a wildflower meadow, building a pond, anything like that. And you can take it to whatever degree you like, really, but anything you can do, it's all beneficial for wildlife, really.
I think also especially inspiring people through what you do with your own garden, and of course not all people may be appealed by the more wilder gardens and what you're doing with it, especially if they're favoring neat and tidy gardens. But you can try to get into a conversation why you are doing what you are doing, and try to get them understand what you are doing for biodiversity, for better climate as well. And at the other side, also expect accept the diversity of perspectives. I think that's also important. As long as not everyone paves their gardens or has millimeter grass lawns, I think it's not really an issue. I think also the garden diversity itself might be an asset in that sense. So based on perspective, human perspective diversity.
I think on a personal note, we recently led a beetle talk, and it personally opened my eyes up to how beneficial beetles can be, but how little things like leaving a log pile or your compost can really benefit. So it can be the small things and the big things. You have to have a wild area necessarily. The next question is, what are the green enterprises being envisaged in Plymouth for this initiative?
So the Real Ideas organisation are the organisation that are doing a lot of work in Devonport and Stonehouse. They are upgrading the market hall in Devonport area, and they're also working with people like Pollinize, community groups like Stiltskin, and there's another one, but it's gone straight out of my head. But they're doing lots of great work in setting up and helping support community initiatives that will are looking to perhaps help wildlife in their area as well. So yeah, that if you go on the Green Minds website, you'll also be able to find out some information there, so you can see everything that Real Ideas is doing. They also have their own website as well, so if you jump on them, you'll be able to find out all the info.
Someone's commented snapdragons.
Snapdragons, that's what it was. Thank you.
Helpful. And the next question is, have you noticed less flooding in Devon and the surrounding areas since the reintroduction of beavers?
Well, definitely on the River Otter beaver trial, there's some really compelling evidence there. If you, again, go on to the Green Minds and Devon Wildlife Trust website, there, the recordings from Beaver Fever, which is a webinar, and there was a great presentation there by Mark Elliott, who's the Beaver Project Officer. And there's some fantastic, really amazing evidence that shows how beavers contribute to natural flood management in our environments. And so, yeah, it's absolutely mind-blowing what they do for a couple of little furry animals. They're pretty industrious.
Brilliant. I think I agree there, that although I wouldn't say they're little, they're quite large to me.
Yeah, I suppose they are, aren't they? They're pretty solid little things.
The next question is to Carijn. What aspects of gardening do you think would be the most helpful for increasing biodiversity?
Oh, that's a nice one. I think, yeah, really letting your garden rewild itself for a big part. I think just watch what grows in there naturally would be, I think, a very exciting thing to do. And also it kind of shows you what will naturally grow there, and also what will kind of attract local, and then look what kind of species it does attract. Of course, that takes some courage in a certain way, because we like to control stuff in most senses. But also just invite species that you would like to see there. Like if you want to invite birds into your garden, make sure that there are habitats for birds, like nesting opportunities, food opportunities, safe spaces. Also try to keep away cats, for example. Those kinds of things. So try to imagine what you would like your garden to be. I think also make it something personal. It doesn't have to fit into a picture of the perfect biodiversity garden, right? I think the nice thing also is that it is really your garden, and that it can show what can represent what you like and what you like to have in there. And then you can go many ways. If you want to do a lot of work in your garden, you can think what you can do to actively improve biodiversity. If you like a more low maintenance garden, but you still want to have biodiversity, you can try to figure out what kind of plants do not need a lot of maintenance and still are inviting to birds and insects and small mammals, etc. I hope that answers your question.
I think it more than answers it. The next question for you again is, how does the Bimbi network work with green minds?
I think we're going to figure that out, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's not long that we've actually made contact, Carijn and myself. So yeah, we've got some ideas, and I'd really like to help Carijn apply her framework to monitoring some of the sort of smaller scale rewilding projects throughout the city, and help monitor what biodiversity is in people's back gardens. So yeah, it's an evolving relationship, I think, isn't it?
It is.
More to come.
I assume we'll keep you posted.
Yes, yeah, we will.
And the question probably for Jess is, what species do you get the most recordings of, and which ones do you need more?
Oh, that's weird, because you'd think that the ones that we get the most records of are the most common species, but that isn't always the case. So if you see, so for example, on one of the examples, I had a sparrow. People see sparrows every day. People don't record them every day, and they don't send them in to us every day. And yet sparrows are actually on a red list for declining birds. So it really varies. And I would suggest that you record, obviously you can't record absolutely everything you see every day. That would take up way too much time. But maybe when you are going out for a walk, maybe have an app with you or a notebook or something, and just even if you just spend 5 minutes sitting somewhere and noting down what you see, even if it's really common, if nobody records common things, we won't know if they're becoming less common. So I don't think that completely answers the question, but I would suggest just send us in lots of different things, whether you think it's something really rare and exciting or something every day.
Yeah, the visible and the invisible, the less common species are appreciated. The next question is, what is meant by an urban wildlife corridor, and what does it look like?
Oh, well, urban wildlife corridors are areas that, through whatever sort of biotic features are in there, can help species move through the landscape. So one of the big issues that we have in the UK and globally is the fact that our natural areas are very disconnected from one another. So they're quite fragmented. And I guess the urban environment is quite a condensed and highlighted view of that fragmentation that we have of habitats across the landscape. So if we can do stuff that can help create more natural environments throughout the city that link existing areas of high quality habitat through creating rewilding corridors, then we can help species move through the landscape, obviously, which is quite difficult in an urban environment because you've got interfaces between hard and soft landscapes, so roads, buildings, It's quite a difficult landscape for creatures to move and filter through. So when you get these fragmented landscapes, the populations become isolated, the genetic diversity is reduced, and eventually you get this thing called an extinction debt. And after time, they'll just disappear. So if we can link up those habitats through rewilding corridors, we can help animals to move through the landscape, connect to new populations, grow those populations, and hopefully expand.
I know hedges are very good, aren't they? They're sort of the identifiable.
Fantastic, yeah, they're highways for animals.
But also think about housing rows with rows of backyards, for example. If you would have them connected, green, you can connect gardens, of course, and make infrastructure from that as well. Yeah,
absolutely. And really simple things like just having bird feeders in your back garden have been shown to massively increase the connectivity for bird species across urban environments, because they can use them as stepping stones, pit stops, refueling stations for moving across the city. So really simple stuff like that can really help.
Fantastic. And the last question is, how can other local nature areas in Plymouth get involved in the Green Minds project?
Like I said, get in contact with us and see how you can get involved and how we can help you to get involved as well. So yeah, there's all sorts of stuff you can do, and we'll be developing lots of activities and programs that, like we said, so whether that's practical conservation volunteering, doing recording, biological monitoring, that sort of stuff. Yeah, get in contact. We want to hear from you, and we want to get the buzz going.
Fantastic. Well, it's been a really interesting talk, and I personally sort of didn't know all there was to know about even recording species or sort of the Bimbi network, which is I think it's a great catchy name. I'd just like to mention that we have, obviously, Green Minds project will have lots of events going on, and we'll feature those on our What's On page. So if you don't necessarily know how to identify a certain group of species, there are going to be online talks and workshops that will help you do that, and also help aid that sort of citizen science aspect of the project. So you can obviously find that on our What's On page on our website, and obviously other online events that we'll be holding over the next few months. So I'd just like to say a big thank you to Nick, Jess and Carijn. You've been fantastic speakers, and we've had some really interesting questions. So thank you to everyone else. So good evening. Hope you all have a pleasant night, and hope you're wrapped up warm because it's due to get a bit colder. So good evening, and sort of thank you very much.
Thank you.
Goodbye, everybody.